Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and to this time-lapse version of a Cockapoo in soft pastel. With the ever-increasing popularity of this breed, I feel like I'm probably going to paint quite a few of these in the future. And if this is a type of fur that you're struggling with, I will be releasing a full-length tutorial series from this over on my Patreon channel. But if you enjoy this here, then please do hit subscribe and do check out all my other playlists here on YouTube. This little portrait is just 10 by 12 inches. And I have returned to trusty old favourite Pastel Matte for this. And I say returned because it's been a while actually since I've used Pastel Matte. I've been exploring other papers recently, and in particular the Kansen Velvet. But with all of these curls and knowing that I'm going to need the ability to use pastel pencil to achieve some of the details, I returned to Pastel Matte. I chose the yellow colour as I thought that would help with the overall warmth of this lovely fur. Now, with the background, I decided to keep that quite plain. However, it does the important job of helping the dog to really pop out from its surroundings. Even though it's very plain, the slight gradation in colour across the background should help both lighter edges of the dog and darker edges to really stand out. So even with a very simple background, I'm always thinking about how it's going to contrast with the main subject. Now, I've already got quite a few videos about backgrounds, and in particular here on YouTube, I've got a few videos on how to go about creating a plain background like this, but that helps your portrait have more impact. But then on to this lovely dog's face. Such beautiful fur. The ears are something else, and for that reason, I leave them until a little bit later in my progress. So I start with his face, working on the top of the head just to decide on my colour choices mainly. There are so many subtle colours in this type of coat. It's a hard one to describe, really. It's like a cream mixed with honey kind of a coat. I'm sure there is an actual name for it. Do let me know in the comments if you know the actual name for this colour of fur. But it's a real delight to paint because I get to crack out some of my favourite colours. I'm mostly using the Unison pastels. And there are two sets actually which I curated for Unison pastels. Their animal set, and then another set called the Light and Shade. And between those two sets, that's probably the majority of the colours that I'm using in this dog. A lot of the colours are these subtle, in-between kind of colours, tints and tones. And by tint, I simply am referring to a colour that's been mixed with white, so that tends to be the lighter values in your palette. So anything but white, basically. I'm using a lot of these cream, pale, fleshy colours as well. Just a real mixture of subtle colours thrown in here. As well as some warmer brown earths and dark browns, of course. And then on the other side of his face, we've got a little bit more shadow over there. And sometimes I even like to exaggerate the shadows a little bit. In this case, to go against all of the yellowy, warm, creamy tones, I decided to use some lighter lilac tints. And I'll often do that. Just a couple of examples of those sorts of colours within the Unison range are A31, A32, those kinds of colours. And they're a really sort of pale grey lilac. I find them so useful for creating the shadow side of things. And you can see that's exactly what I'm using here with those lilac tints right through to sort of mid-tone colours there. So it's a really soft and inviting palette in this type of fur. I absolutely love this colour palette. And while I am trying to create a pretty high level of detail, you'd be surprised actually at the shortcuts I do take, because I'm not necessarily trying to paint absolutely every single hair. I'm more trying to replicate the little clumps of hair and fur that I see. And then I can work a bit more detail into that area if I choose to, but sometimes I don't. It's often around the edges of things where I'll add those extra bits of detail. But sometimes actually less can be more. So I'm not always trying to paint absolutely every hair. Otherwise, I would have to work right across the whole face with my pastel pencils. And I really don't do that. I'm using mostly the soft sticks. And I'm making use of lots of little shards and half sticks and all of the little shapes that they've broken down into. Very few full pastel sticks being used here. So anytime I need detail, I either break the pastel, which I did throughout this painting. I broke 2 full pastels throughout painting this. And that's how I get the extra detail from my soft pastel sticks. But then on the ears, which I knew would be the case, and that's why I used pastel matte for this, I knew I would end up using a lot more pastel pencil on the ears. There's just so much definition in those curls. I mean, any of us would be delighted to have hair like this. Such stunning waves he's got. And I love how that makes the ends of his ears look so thick. And I can just imagine the weight of those ears and the bounce of them as he's running about. So you can see here that I am still using the soft pastel sticks. I just broke one on camera there just to get a sharper edge that I can create some detail with. But then I can go back in around that. This is a dark brown pastel pencil, and just refine the edges, neaten up. So for that ear on the right side, I've made use of more of my shadow tones. So more of the light lilac colours that I described earlier, because we're slightly more in the shade. And then of course the ear on the other side should have slightly different colours because that ear is in the direct light. So that's always how I'm thinking about my colour choices. It's almost like there's one selection of colours for the sunlit side and one selection of colours for the shadow side. And of course then you'll have common colours that run across the whole dog. And I suppose what changes most of all is usually my highlight colours. So in the shadows, my highlights will be much more muted. Perhaps they'll be a cooler colour like those lilac tones. And what I love about the lilac tones, especially when painting a warm type of fur like this, there's still a bit of warmth in lilac. If we go further along the colour scale, then we've got icy cold blues, and that really cools things down. But I'll often make use of these lilac tones when I want to create the idea of a cooler side while still retaining some of the heat, some of the warmth. And this is such a warm coat this dog has that those lilac tones were really perfect for the shadows. So I'm totally avoiding that ear on the left, as you can see. I'm leaving it right till the very end when I can see the finish line in sight. I really find this type of curl so tricky. It slows me down almost to a halt. And even after all these years of painting all sorts of fur, these types of curls really do get me. So I hope that in the tutorial series that I make from this, that I can show you all the ways in which I combat the lack of motivation to keep staring at one tiny area for a long time. How I manage to get through a dense area like this. There's so much to look at, so much to focus on, and sometimes just looking back and forth between my painting and the photo reference, I just completely lose where I am in this jumble of curls. So if this is how you find painting curls, that is completely normal. And it's actually more of a task in terms of your motivation and your patience to see it through. So I hope that I can break this all down in the tutorial series that will come from this. I'm really looking forward to sharing this one with my patrons due to the lovely colour palette. I've already shared those colours with my patrons because some of them were working on a similar colour of dog. And I think the colour choices are sometimes the most important thing. You can put all the detail you like, but if your colour choices and your values are a bit off, it still won't look quite right. Whereas the other way around, if your colour choices and your values are good, you've got a lot of leeway as to how much detail you really need to add in there. So I hope that you've enjoyed seeing this come together in time lapse. Please do hit that subscribe button if you have, and go over to check out my Patreon if you'd like to see more in-depth videos. But thanks very much for watching this here, and until next time, happy pasteling.